Hello there. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Hope you're having a fantastic day or you've had a fantastic day. My name is Cyreta Laws-Frumau. I am a performance and mindset coach, mentor with the Proctor Gallagher Institute. And thank you. If this is your first time seeing me, welcome to my channel. For the month of July, I have been going through the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which has sold over 15 million copies. Now, the idea is that this will inspire you to take action and move towards your burning desire, or to be inspired to come up with a goal, something that is worthy of you and of your time, and that will bring you in alignment with your purpose. My mentor, the late Bob Proctor, he read this book for over 60 years, and it influenced his life hugely to a great extent. When he started reading this book, he was unhappy, he was unhealthy, and he was struggling financially. Now, whatever your circumstances are, not saying that this book is gonna make you happy, but you can put your life in such an order, in such a way that you can influence your circumstances and also those of people around you. Napoleon Hill, in this book, he interviewed over 500 men and women who at the time of the Great Depression were doing extremely well. And so irrespective of your circumstances, I hope that you will use the principles in this book to also make that impact or make that change that you're seeking. We are at chapter 11 of Think and Grow Rich, and I am absolutely loving this chapter. I remember the very first time I read this chapter, I was a little bit confused. I wasn't sure exactly. The first time I read it, I was a little bit confused. I read it, I understood it, but I didn't really understand it how I do now. And that is just growing in awareness. So we're taught to read a book and then put it down and sit an exam and say that we know what's in the book, that we understand it. But that's not usually the case if we want to understand something at a deep level, if we want it to have an impact or influence on our lives. And that's the same with this book. 13 success principles used by millions, okay, that has influenced their lives. So this chapter is the mystery of sex transmutation. And I think chapter 6 with imagination, where it talks about creative imagination, links really nicely with this chapter. And we're going to go into it. It's also a big chapter. So we're going to do more than one videos as we dissect it. Okay, what are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about sex transmutation. I'm going to explain what it is. And also, we're going to go into the 3 constructive possibilities for sex transmutation. So what are the 3 ways that sex transmutation can be used? We're going to look at some scientific research that Napoleon mentions in his book. And we're going to look at the status of genius. And you will see that the status of genius is linked to sex transmutation. Really fascinating stuff. Okay, before I get into the definition, do you remember when we spoke about that there are 2 elements? So scientists have found that there are 2 elements in our universe, in our planet, and the 2 elements are energy and matter. Okay, so bear that in mind, energy and matter. For instance, a thought, which is energy, you can transmute that into matter, and transmute means to change or to transfer. And so to start it off, Napoleon says here, This mystery of sex transmutation, the 10th step towards riches. The emotion of sex brings into being a state of mind. So sex transmutation then, the definition is the transfer of the desire or emotion of sex into a creative force. When we talk about, so when I mentioned earlier about energy and matter, and I gave the explanation of thought and money, he says transmute is the changing or transferring of one element or form of energy into another. So you can have energy into matter, energy changing into energy, and the emotion of sex, which is an energy, can be changed into another emotion, which is the state of mind. So that should be the overall premise as we go ahead. So just understand that transmutation means the changing or the transferring of one element or one form into another. So again, energy into matter, energy into energy, and matter into matter. And the example that we're looking at is the emotion of sex into a state of mind. So that's the premise. Okay. So what are these three constructive possibilities for sex? What can sex give us? What are the possibilities when we have sex? Well, on page 263 of my book, the first one is that the continuation of mankind, which we know. So when we have sex, we have the possibility of becoming pregnant, of making someone pregnant. So then we continue the human race, another child is born, another human being is on our planet. That's the first one, right? So that's the potential of sex. The second one is the maintenance of health. So it's therapeutic, and there is no equal to it, he says. The third one is the transformation of mediocrity into genius. So transferring mediocrity into genius. And that's our third point that we're going to go into today. Why does Napoleon say that there is no equal to sex? Well, if we go forward a little bit, on page 266 of our book, we look at the 10 mind stimuli. And the 10 mind stimuli are the desire for sex, love, a burning desire for fame, power, financial gain, money. 4, music. 5, friendship with either the same sex or an opposite sex. The mastermind. Mutual suffering. So that's also a mind stimuli. Autosuggestion is a mind stimuli. 9, fear. And 10, narcotics and alcohol. However, of these 10 mind stimuli, 8 of these stimuli are natural and constructive, and 2 are destructive. And the emotion of sex is the most intense and most powerful of all mind stimuli. So the emotion of sex is the greatest and most intense, the most powerful of all mind stimuli. So even though persons might turn to drugs and alcohol, using mushrooms and all these things, and love, even though they're very powerful, well, narcotics and alcohol is a little bit more destructive, but even though they're very powerful, sex is the most powerful of all. So that's what we're focusing on in this chapter. So sex is merely switching your mind, the sex desire, you switch your mind from, the physical expression of sex, and you can use it to transfer it into a more creative energy. And he mentions here, which is so true, that, you know, when men or women are driven by that desire for sex, it can actually, he says, men develop a keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creativity. But the emotion of sex, if it's not transferred into a creative effort, it might find a less worthy path to take. And I guess this is where, if someone feels like a strong desire for sex, they might do something hurtful to someone else to have it. So if they don't use it properly, then it goes into a negative expression. So that's the first part. We spoke about the possibilities of it, what it is. The second part is we're going to go into now is the scientific research. And that is on the end of page 264 in my book, going into 265. And Napoleon says there are two significant facts about this. The first one is that men who achieve the greatest achievement, so men and women who achieve the greatest, they learn how to transmute sex. So they learn the art of sex transmutation. Again, the men who have accumulated great fortunes and achieve outstanding recognition in literature, art, industry, architecture, and the professions were motivated by the influence of a woman. So the first thing is that these persons who have achieved greatness, who have accumulated great fortune, this is the scientific research, they learned the art of sex transmutation, and two, they were motivated by the influence of a woman. And the link between that, what Napoleon is saying is that there's a link between greatness or great achievements and highly developed sex nature. I want you to get this. Look at this. On page 265, in the third to last paragraph, he says the emotion of sex is an irresistible force against which there can be no opposition. When driven by this emotion, men become gifted with superpower for action. Understand this truth, and you will catch the significance of the statement that sex transmutation will lift one to the status of genius. And then Napoleon's, he speaks about when an animal is being castrated. So when an animal becomes castrated, they lose that power. They become very docile. That's to show how important their sex organ is. It's like they lose some of their power. Okay, so let's go now into the status of genius. And understand this, the proof, Napoleon offers some really strong proof in this chapter. So you can research it for yourself. You can look on the soundness of the statements that are being made, but you can also get proof by experimenting yourself. And we're going to go into some very practical ways of how you can experiment for yourself. Okay, genius. What is genius? He describes genius on page 267. Genius is a man or woman, so a person, who has discovered how to increase the vibration of thought to the point where he can freely communicate with sources of knowledge not available through the ordinary rates of vibration of thought. And we can see how this is linked to imagination. This is exactly what we said when we spoke about the power of the imagination. So a genius, it has elevated thoughts. and they're communicating with sources of knowledge that we don't have access to as we go about our daily basis unless we apply certain techniques. Okay, so how can we communicate with these sources of knowledge? And are there known sources of knowledge available to the genius? And what are they and how can they be reached? Napoleon Hill talks about the sixth sense, and the sixth sense is the creative imagination. And as we said with the creative imagination in chapter 6, is that the creative imagination, comes through hunches, inspiration, these thoughts that seem to just come to us from nowhere. Well, he gets into it here. So he says all so-called revelations referred in the realm of religion and all discoveries of basic or new principles in the field of invention take place through the faculty of creative imagination. So it comes through the faculty of creative imagination. So persons who, they're religious or they're spiritual, they're still using that faculty of creative imagination. The scientist that gets his, that puts through his invention, they're all influenced through this creative imagination. On page 268, we're going to look into this. So we say, how, what are these sources? What are these sources that are available only to the genius? On page 268, number 1, infinite intelligence. Number 2, one's subconscious mind, which comes through the which is stored in every sense impression and thought impulse, whichever reach the brain through any of the 5 senses. So your subconscious mind, the mind of another person, and from other person's subconscious storehouse. And this last part, we can see how this will this comes into play with the mastermind, because we say that you can pick up thoughts and you pick up the vibration of thoughts when you're associated with persons that they have a highly developed brain. These 4, he says there are no other known sources from which inspired ideas or hunches may be received. The creative imagination functions best when the mind is vibrating due to some form of mind stimuli at an extremely high rate. So the 4 sources we said: infinite intelligence, we call it God, your own subconscious mind, the mind of some other person, or some other person's subconscious mind. So those are the known sources. Okay, how can they be reached? How can you reach these sources? First, we have to note that your mind needs to be vibrating at a higher, needs to be at a higher vibration than you normally are. So I'm talking to you now. My mind is at a normal rate of vibration. Okay, so for me to access the status of genius, which is available to all of us, so it's not only some of us that have the status of genius, it's available to all of us. For us to raise our vibration and raise our level of thought, we need to do this through one of the mind stimuli, as it says, stimulation of the mind. And we want to use sex, the emotion of sex, the desire for sex. And this thought is actually, it's higher than us thinking of our basic needs. If you are focused on your food, your clothing, your shelter, those basic needs, then you are operating at a very normal rate of vibration. When you want to tap into something beyond what you can see and feel through the five senses, then you are tapping into a higher vibration. I hope you understand what I'm saying. This is something that we all have access to, but if we think we're only a physical being, then we're ignoring a large part of ourselves. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and the spiritual side of us is much bigger. It's much more powerful than the physical side. So when we are operating at that higher plane, then we have the freedom for action, and we give expression to the sixth sense. We become receptive to ideas that we wouldn't necessarily have under normal vibration. And the sixth sense, I think you've probably heard it, where it's like this really still small voice. It's that, like with this intuition or hunch or inspiration, it's when something tells you, sometimes it warns you, sometimes it just gives you a thought, and the thought works out. Like I've had it a couple, enough times through my life to know, and you probably would have had it too, that still small voice where the best ideas come through. So the ideas come from within. They're coming from God, infinite intelligence. They're coming from your subconscious, the subconscious of someone else, or the mind of someone else. I'm gonna stop here for today. Like I said, it's really fascinating. I really could go on, but if I do that, we will definitely go over our usual 15 to 20 minutes. So let's recap. We said that sex is the most powerful of all mind stimuli. The desire for sex, which is an emotion, can be transferred into a state of mind. And this state of mind can push us to the status of genius. And we mentioned the scientific research that backs it. And we spoke about the sources of knowledge that are available to the genii. And we also spoke about, what they are. How can they be reached is when we elevate our thoughts to a higher plane. The details of that is actually through meditation or relaxation. And we're going to go into the stories. We didn't touch on the stories today, but we're going to go, if you want to read ahead, we're going to go into stories of Gates and Edison and how they use that, how, Gates was able to have over 200 patents by just quieting the mind and going within, because all ideas, all great inspirations come from within. So that's it for me today. I hope that this was interesting for you. It was very interesting for me, and I love sharing this with you, and I love talking to you about this. So until my next video, I hope you have a beautiful day. Talk to you soon. Bye.